This is Haze V3, a roleplay server in Neverwinter Nights which I co-founded in 2021 and was the lead dungeon master of. It's a small community where players are given power to run the local town, there is permadeath, and players are kept at low levels to reflect a slightly grittier approach to roleplay. It's also a project I invested a lot of time leading its creation, but left it 11 days after launch. Why I really left I never actually told anyone. I was worried it would make me look bad, petty and mean. But it is what it is. It happened. I can't change it, but I can share it. I figured it's time to spill the beans and tell you the incredible mess which was me, spearheading a project that I really should have had nothing to do with. This is the real story of Haze V3 and the chain of events that led me to quit. Haze is a shipwreck-infested, inescapable island, with a local town called Convoluted, initially run by a few NPCs that I made. There are also some nightmarish creatures called crawlers. It was supposed to generate a type of horror atmosphere, which felt fitting to permadeath and the hardcore setting of the server. Plus, a tense relationship with the tribal orcs to the north should have added a political element to the whole thing. I really had it all planned out. The very first night we had a showing of a large crawler at the southern gates of the town. The intense dark atmosphere we had set in place felt great. I remember it fondly actually, except one part when the NPC went rogue on me when I unpossessed it, and it solo attacked the large crawler. I just pretended that was what's supposed to happen as opposed to retconning it as a bug. We then went ahead and played it out as a full-on attack event, and that NPC ended up being the first casualty of the launch. Later on, I even made some crazy things happen, like a shipwreck event ramming into the tavern. There was some loot there. The other DM, Ragnarok, was starting to get concerned I was cuddling them too much. He had invested a lot of effort in perfecting an intricate crafting system and wanted to see it in action, with players working together to get resources and gradually getting better gear. Myself and the other builder, Moander, spread around the resource spawns. I trusted them. They were a part of the original Haze from 2004, so we had this bond and understanding of what the original Haze meant. As it turned out later, it meant entirely something else for me as it did for them. 10 hours in. After the DM events played out, the players began exploring. They had explored way deeper than I ever expected them to for the first day, going deep into the orcish caves. It's like they weren't afraid of dying, which sort of defeats the purpose of permadeath. That which we had built for months, players are now scouring within a day. Wherever the players could reach, they reached. To be fair, what else is there to do when you're logged in for hours on end? At least the cold system that we had set in place pushed them back from exploring all the way north. Concerned about the amount of time players are playing, I began entertaining the idea of having the server online only at certain times so both they as the players and we as dungeon masters wouldn't burn out. It didn't go well with the rest of the staff who wanted it to remain a persistent world like the original Haze. I was already getting exhausted playing the NPCs. The idea was to promote one of the player characters, give them the first taste of power to help run the town. Well, not so much help as just run the town themselves. I wanted to fast forward the process so I wouldn't have to manage the town NPCs anymore. In the original Haze, player characters were eventually their respective hamlet leaders. However, they had to take that role from NPCs, which wasn't easy. I didn't want a repeat of that. I wanted to give players power as soon as possible. It was a source of tension between me and Rag. Theoretically, he was probably right that we should milk out the drama. Practically, I was hesitant in delegating, a repeating theme which eventually consumed me. There were two characters vying for that leadership role, Gaiseric and Aldo. To help decide, I saw what the other characters had to say about them. Mind you, it's only been a day. How much can they know about each other? That's how fast I wanted to get rid of the NPCs. I also had a DM event planned with an orc tribe visiting the town demanding protection money. Well, resources in this case. While waiting for the event to start, Rag pushed for the idea that they would go gather resources before the orcs arrive. I went along with it. Shortly after, I got this message from Aldo, basically griping about the fact that he didn't get any credit for grinding for 6 hours. I told him to keep it in character. Reading it in hindsight, it was another hint into the powerful hold the crafting system had on the server and the player base. The enormous amount of energy they put in it and the value it holds. I was out of touch with the players. Anyway, the orcs event rolled. It was really difficult controlling that many NPCs and plus both sides, the town NPCs and the orcs. DM Rag was there to help with the side rolls, but it wasn't enough to alleviate the stress. Ideally, this is an event for 4 DMs, 2 for the main characters and 2 for the other NPCs. If there was something I wasn't prepared for, it's the sheer amount of text I had to ignore or just missed because I couldn't handle that much data. Anyway, story being those orcs were looking for a deserter from their ranks. I then had the idea that's gonna be the quest for Aldo and Gaiseric. Whoever finds that orc and brings his head will get the job. As the DM event played out, Aldo found the deserter first and gave orders to his cronies to kill him. DM Under then made the comment, "I really wanted them to take him back so we could siege Coffin's wad." Oh, that's rich. I forgot he said that. Long story short, Aldo got the troll from the NPCs despite his whiny attitude as a player. Although it may have been a red flag, he did still earn it in character fair and square. Day 3. I truly began hating playing the town's NPCs. It was getting to be too much work. In hindsight, I definitely should have delegated. I should have had another DM to play them properly or not have them at all. Turns out it's really difficult running an event while playing NPCs who are supposed to be reacting to that event. It happened over and over. I kept looking for excuses for the players to leave the NPCs alone. NPCs were getting sick and maimed or just being generally unavailable. I ran another event. Some orcs from one tribe were hunting orcs from another tribe. I wanted the players to understand there was a power struggle between 2 orcish tribes. Maybe it would lead to some interesting developments later on. At this point, they just needed to know that a power struggle exists. Unfortunately, I didn't learn from my first mistake, and once again an NPC went out of freaking script. Once again, I just played it out. No rollbacks. And again, I probably should have just retconned it as a bug. I guess that's my attitude, rolling with the punches. Back then, in my view, it was just another encouragement to get rid of the NPCs as soon as possible. But looking back at it now, I keep having the same realization. I really shouldn't have those kind of events without a DM in charge of the town NPCs. It's a mistake that kept repeating itself. Day 5. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to begin the process of getting rid of the NPCs ASAP. It wasn't particularly well thought out. Something about the town leader NPC being demonically possessed. It was bad. Maybe I should have had all the NPCs just try to leave the island. I was also deciding things on my own and not really consulting the rest of the staff, just because I was so burnt out, which I did realize was self-absorbed and not the right way to approach important decisions. I guess it's not always easy to know you're too far gone when you're too far gone. And I was too far gone. Way in over my head in terms of workload, and it began having a toxic effect on me. What ended up happening was a weird shit show. The NPCs ended up locking themselves up somewhere inside the keep's interior, telekinesising off anyone who came close to a magical door, apparently. Yeah, it was weird. I didn't really have an endgame for that, and although I played around with ideas, nothing happened. When I made the first documentary about Haze V3, I probably completely ignored that part. Meanwhile, somewhere on the island, players managed to discover a secret location somewhere in a cave underground. Well, I guess it wasn't that secret if they managed to find it so fast. It was meant as a unique placeholder location for a DM event, that's why it was flooded with zombies. Problem is, there was no bone on the meat for this DM event yet. The reason players were so obsessed about it is this: a sword lodged into a stone. Wielder of the sword, victorious upon the land, the mist shall fade and the sun will rise again. Let me explain something. Originally, DMO Under, the Nazgul avatar, was also our builder. He made this location with all the writings on the ground. It was just another area for him. Now when I saw it, I thought it was cool, so I added this Excalibur-like object to it to give that area extra meaning. Actually, I edited a lot of his areas to give them some story-related meanings that may be developed later on. But the sword wasn't something I had built into the toolset, it was just an object. You can click it, but nothing would happen. I did have that overpowered sword in my inventory in case I could think of something, but for me that would be far into the future. So when I had placed that object originally, I didn't really spare a thought. Just a fun, atmospheric object and description which I might use as a DM event. But the players who were exploring everything way faster than I thought they would, latched onto that obsessively. Obsessively would be an understatement. So I had to find a way to repel them. I wanted the players to leave and never come back, to understand that the risk was too high. So as the players were poking around, suddenly the zombies found a way through the cracks. It didn't help. Players were obsessing about it. Sometimes they would go there individually, sometimes a full party. I didn't even try to kill anyone, but it happened. Ulrich died, and I really liked him. Terrific roleplayer. He thought it was unfair, but I was actually glad someone died. Maybe now they would learn a lesson not to go back there. Of course they didn't, and more died. I don't even remember if it was eventually made inaccessible or whatever, but it was quite the death trap for what was a meaningless, undeveloped story. There was too much going on for me to focus on developing that specific story, unfortunately. I was wearing way too many hats. But more important things happened on day 5. The players had a meeting in the tavern and decided that they should be in control of the town, not the crazy NPCs, which is more or less what I wanted to have happened. Day 6. As the NPCs were finally ignored, Aldo started taking control of the management of the town, recruiting and delegating. Aldo's player was getting impatient and bashing the DMs publicly for not getting enough attention on time. I told him he would get the attention, he just needed to be patient. He wasn't. In fact, he was really starting to get on my nerves. To make things worse, his character spoke in modern-day slang, which is my pet peeve. I wanted to kill Aldo so badly. I started to seriously contemplate how. I mean, what's to say that a section of the keep ceiling won't suddenly collapse on him? I'm not joking, I was ready to do it, but Rag held me back, talked me out of it. It's a good thing he did. It was petty and wrong to even suggest it. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I really wanted him dead, but that would have made a bad situation worse. So with the other DMs not wanting me to directly kill Aldo, I had to be creative and find ways to indirectly do so without them suspecting that was my plan all along. Because I still definitely wanted to very much kill him, I just wanted to get away with it, basically. You know, I had to make it seem like a natural in-character development. Oh, did Aldo die? Such a shame. Boy, those players are really at each other's throat, aren't they? At this point I was really a deranged and burnt out lead DM with a personal vendetta to kill a player. This is when things started to get really batshit crazy. I chose a really convoluted path to achieve that goal and created an even bigger mess. It began when another player character was on my radar, Kelston, but for positive reasons. He's actually caught my attention from the very beginning, studying the lore, reading the books I had placed, speaking to NPCs, forming a sort of lore-finding council with the other players, impressively going about trying to figure out the secrets of the island. No less important, he was also part of the Anti-Aldo Alliance, which meant he was on my side. Unbeknown to him, he was about to be roped into something he hadn't quite bargained for. What would he do if I gave him incredible powers? So there was a box I made which found its way to Kelston. Inside the box, a seed that needed to be planted for something to happen. Day 8. It wasn't just me and Kelston. Disliking Aldo was trending. Some disliked him simply because he wasn't elected by the players. He was elected by NPCs, and the NPCs weren't really there to protect him anymore. They wanted democracy. Others disliked him after this specific encounter, where he refused to fight with some orcs. They branded him a coward. As the drama of the day built up, there was a big showdown in Coffin's Wood. A fight was about to start. Aldo had 3 strong half-orcs under his command and a halfling. Myself and DMO Anders saw it about to go down. We had warned them that everyone that dies in this fight will die for good. It would have been epic, except we didn't realize Ragnarok, the technical lead, disabled player killings by default. You could only knock people unconscious. There was obviously a way for DMs to disable it, but we didn't know how. It was a disaster that caused a whole lot of confusion and embarrassment for us, but we eventually figured it out and just let Aldo execute whoever he knocked down. Interestingly enough, some players of the anti-Aldo alliance then went to live in exile. Kira and Malrum, for instance. Kira went into exile after the execution events. Malrum was exiled by Aldo, which was kinda cool story-wise, but also not very practical because we didn't have the crafting infrastructure anywhere else. It's one of those things I kept under tight control. I didn't want to split Coffin's Wood. I didn't think it was healthy for the server. They somehow made being in exile work for them. They had a network of insiders to speak with, and sometimes they snuck into Coffin's Wood when no one was online so they could use the crafting stations. Day 9. Remember that thing Kelsa was watering? Yeah, so that thing grew into a magic ball sphere. I guess that's what happens when you plan in a rush and do weird things. There was a description of Kelston leading an army of crawlers. It was pretty weird, the whole story. Rag definitely didn't approve. That's one unhappy fog monster. The point of it, I guess, was foreshadowing Kelston, but it was a weird event and... Jesus. I didn't share many of the details with the other DMs, which is clearly a violation, but at this point I stopped caring. As Kelston left Coffin's Wood, I could finally enact the scene I was waiting for. The crawler was no longer hostile to him. In fact, it was sheltering him. This was probably one of my favorite roleplay scenes. Such a powerful moment. Unfortunately, this is when arguments with other staff members came to a boiling point about me being too self-involved. They were right. Of course, I want to say I calmly stepped down realizing it. The truth is I got seriously pissed off and good luck goodbye them. Others took over. I later heard that Aldo was defeated, those screenshots being sent to me by a player. As I left, I thought about it a whole lot. What could I have done differently? The truth is I never should have joined that project to begin with. I thought everyone wanted what I wanted. I was clearly wrong, not understanding what Haze V3 meant to the staff members and to the players. The old Haze, Haze V1, hit different not because it was better than Haze V3. Yeah, there were a lot more players back then, but this has a lot to do because Neverwinter Nights was in its heyday. The truth is I don't think it's all that different from Haze V3. I think the difference was me. I was in a different place in life, a teenager who wanted to get lost in an immersive environment hours on end. I really didn't care about epic storylines like I do now, I just wanted interaction and socialization. Online comradeship, in a world I personally found unique, believable and immersive. Did I play hours on end like those players in Haze V3? Of course I did. Did I incessantly engage in crafting? Hell yeah I did. So if the goal was to create a stable version of Haze V1, I think the people that took over achieved incredible success. It's a great place to interact, roleplay and establish an alternate self. I'm glad it's still up and running and that I had something to do with it. Recreating Haze was an obsession of mine that I held for many years after its original disintegration. After my time DMing in Haze V3, I had a lot to think about. When I saw it managed to survive without me, I was surprised, even a bit mad. Haze-inspired projects don't exactly have a history of lasting for a long time. I guess permadeath is a really hard sale unless done right. And I guess they did do something right. So I sucked my pride, and a year after I left I asked them if I could record. They let me. Those are recordings from late 2022. There were no high-stake events or big stories going on. I just recorded their daily lives, seeing what I could latch onto, anything of interest. I soon realized it's a bad tactic. All I was doing was gathering an enormous amount of conversation data. I figured what needs to happen is me capturing some major high-stake DM event from scratch. That's how I could keep track of everything and just get to know those characters through how they respond to the big event. I tried nudging the staff to do something, but couldn't get much of a response. So I stopped. There was no point to keep recording until a major storyline emerged. I told them to give me a heads up if that ever happens. They never did. The offer still stands. Nevertheless, I understand why they wouldn't want to run such a high-stake event. Such events don't just require a heck of a lot more work. They have a negative effect on the stability of the server, which is risky. That may not be something in the best interest of the player base. Finally, although I don't ever want to be involved in the 24/7 format as a player or as an active DM, to me the meaning of Haze changed from a game to a story. I was out of place there. I had different ideas and that became obvious very fast. Still, if I didn't join Haze, I wouldn't have had that epiphany. So, all in all, it was good. It led me to take my own path and go on my own journey, which I'm now able to share with you through my channel. I would consider this a good ending. Hope you enjoyed, and till next time.